Our Soapbox Social panel obviously is here once again, and it's been another tough week for BC's official opposition after BC United leader Kevin Falcon accused BC Conservative leader John Rustad of homophobia. BC United dropped their own candidate for Surrey South for comments he admitted were, quote, inconsistent with our support for BC LGBTQ plus community, end quote. And Teddy O'Donnell, a fundraising coordinator, left BC United for the BC Conservatives. Joining me in studio with their thoughts is our Soapbox Social panel. Kyla Lee, a Vancouver criminal lawyer for Acumen Law Corporation. Hello.
Hello.
And Mo Amir is the host of the podcast This is Van Keller. Hello, Mo.
Hi, Amy.
All right, Mo, how would you describe what things have been like for BC United?
Oh, dumpster fire? I mean, I guess that
works, yeah.
It just seems like they're taking L after L after L. No real optimism throughout 2024 for this party. A lot of bad judgment, lapses in judgment from their leader, Kevin Falcon. I was on BC Today yesterday, and I did say that I think at this point he should resign. I don't really see the point of keeping him on when you keep having these really terrible gaffes. And I think the gaffe with the candidate, Mr. Gondal, yesterday was particularly bad because it hurt a lot of communities. You know, you had members of the Jewish community saying that they were hurt by it. You had members of the LGBTQ community saying that they were hurt by it. And again, I do think the Muslim community will also be ultimately hurt by this because I think they were trying to get a Muslim candidate in that riding. And instead of doing their due diligence, instead of really asking people even within their own party to find a suitable candidate, they just went for the loudest person at the mosque, which was 1990s style ethnic outreach, which just doesn't work when you treat religious or ethnic communities as homogenous monoliths.
Right.
So I don't know. I just don't think he's cut for it. I've been saying that for many years now, and he keeps proving me right.
Yesterday, Kareem Alam, a former campaign manager for Kevin Falcon, criticized BC United for recruiting Asad Gondal, who they dropped as their candidate for South Surrey or for Surrey North in the first place. Here's what some of what he said to me when we spoke yesterday.
The assumption here was going out and getting a Muslim leader would get you the entire Muslim diaspora. It doesn't work that way. If you get Jimmy Pattison, you don't get the entire Caucasian community in British Columbia. It is not a homogenous community either. It's a community of diverse opinions. In fact, Arabs only represent 20% of Muslims worldwide. And even within Egypt, where I come from, there are 22 ethnicities. In Pakistan, there are multitudes of ethnicities. So the idea that there was a homogenous approach to building a relationship with the Muslim community is what ultimately led to the trouble.
Kyla, what lessons, not just BC United, but can all parties take from this?
Don't elect Kevin Falcon as your leader. I think
noted.
I think the biggest lesson here is the importance of vetting your candidates. This seems to be a consistent theme as we're leading up to this election, that we're seeing candidates who have not been properly vetted, whether it's, people rushing to try and, name a candidate that they think that's going to be a star candidate, or maybe just a lack of quality applicants. But there is a real problem in the vetting process in multiple instances across more than one party.
The reality here, though, is that BC United is having a very tough time recruiting candidates. You look at the BC NDP and the BC Conservatives, they actually are running nomination races in several ridings. So they do have kind of their pick of the litter in a sense. Whereas BC United, despite what Mr. Falcon has said, that, they have strong candidate recruitment, there are certain areas throughout the province where they're really struggling. And so I think when they have someone raise their hand, there is this propensity to be like, okay, let's just run this person. Maybe they're not the best. Maybe they won't even win this riding. They're not optimistic about it. And so they're just kind of going with what they can get.
Kyla, what do you think what can BC United do to maybe turn the tide?
I don't agree with Mo that Kevin Falcon needs to resign.
No?
I think to me that would make a bad situation worse. It's not like he's doing a great job as the leader, but if he abandons ship, it essentially says I'm giving up on this party, and it sends the message that they've failed before they've actually even started the official campaign process, before the election's been called. So that to me is it would signal a bad sign, and I think that the other parties would also seize upon the opportunity to to say, he quit because BC United is an abject failure, and so don't cast your votes for them, and it would make the position of other parties stronger. So I don't see that as a genius political maneuver at this point. I think what they need to do is come up with some very concrete plans and ideas to appease members of the public who have lost confidence in them. What those look like, I don't know.
Well, I will ask you that then, Mo. You have called for Kevin Falcon to step down. So from a
First of all, Kyla, what is worse than 0 seats? How do you get worse than that? Because that's what they're projected to win. So either way, sorry, please.
Just downtrodden attitudes. Strategy perspective, Mo. If you were advising BC United right now, what do you suggest they do?
I do think Mr. Falcon has to step aside. I think you are in a full Save the Furniture campaign, even though the furniture has also been destroyed at this point. You look at a guy who is maybe friendly and jovial like Peter Millibar, or you look at someone who's maybe a little more neutral like Kyla Lee, who maybe if he's leader, he can actually win back his riding. And he has done a lot of good community outreach in Vancouver, Langara. I think with Mr. Falcon, the issue has been, and we talked about this last week as well, you run this expensive $1 million high visibility television campaign during the hockey games, and the public dislikes you more. The more this person is out there in the public, the worse they do in the polls. You're actually starting to see in a lot of the BC United social media, Mr. Falcon is absent. So I think the party inherently knows that he is a big liability. And so, again, when you're kind of at the bottom at this point, and you know that this candidate is a liability, why not just try something else to try to keep a couple of seats and a couple of, honestly, good people and good MLAs in the BC legislature?
All right, let's switch topics. You don't often hear a former BC NDP member criticized their own party, but this week Glenn Clark, who was BC's NDP premier from 1996 to 99, criticized the party's policy at the Business Council of BC's annual Business Summit in Vancouver. We'll take a listen.
In recent years, the provincial government has made literally dozens of changes to the rules governing forestry and land use. While each change, in and of itself, may be justified, and each change may indeed be modest, the cumulative impact on industry operating on the land has been devastating. These changes have compounded the effect of massive forest fires and the mountain pine beetle infestation. Today, the BC forest industry is in crisis. Sawmills have closed and more are closing. Harvest levels are down to that which we saw in the 1960s. Pulp mills are unprofitable.
Kyla, what do you think of Glenn Clark's criticism on the NDP there?
I mean, in lots of ways, he's not wrong. He's making very good points about a large group of British Columbians who feel quite alienated by the NDP and what the NDP's been doing. And, a lot of people sort of say that the NDP focuses too much, and I think it's a fair criticism, on the Lower Mainland in the election and not focusing on these areas outside the Lower Mainland where you have these industries like sawmills and things like that are more impacted by decisions that the government is making. And this focus on, I think, as he put it, as on sort of fixing the wealth gap without generating wealth is a problem, because for a lot of people, you just kind of feel like you're treading water financially instead of ever getting ahead. And sure, the government can help you tread water, but nobody wants to just stay in the same place. Yeah. People want to have opportunities for advancement, and I think they don't see that.
And Mo, how relevant do you think this perspective is to today's politics? I
think it's relevant in the sense that, one, first of all, Glenn Clark kind of sounding like Christy Clark in that clip, hey? It is interesting, but I think Mr. Clark, Premier Clark, comes from this mentality, which is a fair mentality and still exists within the BC NDP, of a labor left. And it's the idea of, let's get people high-paying jobs in the natural resource sector. And so I think that his view is very much relevant. I don't know him as a personality across the broad spectrum of British Columbia still resonates the same way, but I think that view is, I think certainly within the party, he is still held to a certain reverence. And I think he represents that fracture. But, when we talk about natural resources, we also need to talk about the natural resource of just land, and that includes urban and suburban settings. The biggest thing I think holding back a lot of businesses is just the cost of land. If you're a mechanic, if you're trying to set up any type of storefront, it's just the barrier is really hard to entry for a lot of entrepreneurs.
No, it's an incredibly fair point. And, you said people in the party might agree, but do you think the business community agrees with his comments?
I think certainly some agree, absolutely, and maybe even a majority. Certainly if you're in the natural resource sector and you're having someone saying we need to expand this or we need to create big projects. One criticism from the right that I hear about the BC NDP is they haven't brought forward any big ideas. No Site C in that sense, no Trans Mountain Pipeline, no Coastal GasLink. These were all projects that preceded the BC NDP government, and they don't really have anything like that to really build a future vision for the province. So I think he's kind of speaking to that feeling.
Kyla, what impact, though, will his comments have?
If the way David Eby has responded to anybody's criticism or comments is anything, probably none. I don't think that it's going to change anything about the way that they're running their campaign. I think they still feel very secure in their position and very secure that, the votes that they want, they're probably going to get.
All right. We are going to move on from politics and get into the important business. All week we've been asking people what their song of the summer is and then playing their picks. And Kyla, I understand that you have a pick for us.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
And I'm never one to shy away from shamelessly promoting all of my ridiculous, hilarious, creative projects. So my song of the summer is a song I wrote.
Oh, okay.
Shocking, right?
Well, what do you know?
It's called Forecast, and it's a little bit like pop punk vibes, and it's the song of the summer.
We're not in the habit of promoting your various escapades, but I think we should play a little clip right now.
Please, yeah.
Met you on a summer's day. Thought that you would always stay. Took our love and then it grew. Way back when, just me and you. Rain's gonna come and wash it all away. Should've seen it coming, should've seen it coming. I'm a forecast. Don't rain on me, I'm a forecast. Gonna set me free, I'm a forecast. Wait and see, I'm a forecast.
That was way more of a bop than I thought it was going to be.
I'm forecasting a hit.
I like it. Mo, top that.
First of all, was that song dedicated to Darius?
Of course.
Love it.
Kyla, as good as your song was, there is only one greatest summer song of all time. It's from a Canadian group. This actually might be the greatest song of all time, period,
I
of all
know
seasons.
where you're going with this.
You know.
I know.
It's Len, Steal My Sunshine, the greatest song of all time. My favorite song of all time.
Of all time?
Yeah, I love
wow,
it.
those are fighting words, but to each their own. Thank you both. That is our Soapbox Social, and Mo Amir is the host of This is Vancouver podcast, and Kyla Lee, a criminal lawyer for Acumen Law Corporation.